I wasn't going to demonstrate processing again, and I decided to demonstrate a different type of processing, one that I've used many times. You'll read about sprinkling, a transitional or a thumb partial, very similar to the way that we sprinkle our ortho acrylic, except with denture acrylic. Now, denture acrylic doesn't work very well for sprinkling. It's not what it's made for, so it's a bit of a pain to sprinkle. But I have used this technique a lot myself. I used it a lot at the charity clinic down in Jamaica because I had to make a lot of dentures very quickly. And what I do is I mix or equal parts of our repair acrylic, which is a Dentsply ortho resin or a Den Plus C, ortho C, and then an equal amount of cold cure repair acrylic, whichever I'm using, the Den Plus Repair or Ivoclar Pro Base Cold Cure, whatever acrylic I have. I mix one part of sprinkle ortho with one part of cold cure denture acrylic, and then I can sprinkle. So I'm going to grab an instrument. I'm going to start out by mixing some denture acrylic, because I'm going to use the denture cold cure repair acrylic for the flange and for around the teeth, but I'm going to make most of the palette with the sprinkled acrylic. So this is all about timing. What I'm going to do is mix the denture acrylic, get it so that it's in its induction stage, where it's going from your first mix to the rubbery stage that we want. I'll put that aside, and while it's going through that stage, I'll do my sprinkling with the half ortho, half repair acrylic. And if I time it right, when I finish my sprinkling, the denture acrylic will be ready to apply. So as we talked about previously, I want to have a nice, smooth, creamy mix for the repair acrylic. I don't want it to be stiff or sandy or gritty or chunky or anything. I want it to be nice and smooth and like a thick cream. And now I'm going to cover that. You always want to cover cold cure acrylic, well, any acrylic. Once you've mixed it, you want to cover it. I'm going to get some monomer ready, and now I'm going to start to sprinkle. Same way that we sprinkle our ortho. Now the denture acrylic is not meant for sprinkling, so the monomer doesn't like to spread through the denture acrylic the way that it does through the ortho acrylic that you've used. That's why I mix in half ortho acrylic with it. You can't put it on very thick because the monomer doesn't like to spread nicely through it. But very similar to the way we did our ortho. I'm going to add a little powder. And I'm going to wet it with the liquid. I use monomer which I have dyed a little reddish, because it helps to make this look more like denture acrylic. So I use this technique when I have to do a quick transitional or an emergency flipper. And as I said, in Jamaica, I had to process a lot of dentures very quickly. I was generally processing something like 30 or 40 dentures in basically 2 days. And so this was with minimal equipment. About the only equipment I had was a pressure pot. And so this was the method that I liked to use. The students that came down to the clinic with me would bend the clasps and do the setups, and then I would matrix the cases and boil them out and do the processing, and then everyone would trim. So in the space of the 5 days of the clinic, we would see about 200 patients, and we would make anywhere up to about 100, 120 dentures. Actually, we would insert up to 120 dentures. We would usually make somewhere around 40 to 60, but we would also do the repairs. We would be doing usually about 20, 30, 40 repairs, and we would also have another 20 to 30 full dentures which we had processed in Toronto that we would be inserting. And we would also be doing the impressions and occlusal rims and bites for another 20 to 30 full dentures to take back to Toronto, because we couldn't process, we couldn't do any heat cure processing down there. All we had was cold cure. And so there's the basic shape of my palette. See how my acrylic's still a little bit soft. I was a little too quick there. So I'm going to add just a little bit more here on the midline. So I haven't added any acrylic in the area where the teeth are going to go. I'm going to put the denture acrylic in there. I've tried to leave the acrylic a little bit thin in that area because I want to put the denture acrylic and then sprinkle some more acrylic over the top of that to really bond the denture acrylic to the ortho acrylic. So this is still a little bit too soft. So it's a little bit runny. For putting it in the matrix, we want it to be a little more rubbery. We don't want it to run around so much because then it doesn't develop any internal pressure as you're pushing down on the matrix, and it just flows out of the way. We want it to push back against the matrix slightly because that helps to keep the acrylic a little bit, it helps to keep it a little denser. So that's a little more rubbery now. So I'll put this in the area where the flange is going to be. I have my teeth here. I always put a little drop of monomer on the teeth. I usually put, but you don't want to have liquid monomer sitting on the teeth. You can see how this is still running a little bit. So I'll just bring that up a touch. Make sure my teeth are in the matrix. Now I can press the matrix into place. Smooth out my denture acrylic. I'm going to blend the denture acrylic back into the ortho acrylic. I don't want a sudden transition from the denture to the ortho. The more transition area I've got, the more bond that we'll have. And now I'll just add a little bit of ortho acrylic over that denture acrylic. Just make sure that I have enough everywhere to trim. 7s. See, the denture ortho mix, it doesn't want to doesn't sprinkle nearly as nicely as just the ortho, but it sprinkles much better than just the denture. Okay, and so I can now throw this in the pressure pot, and there's our denture. And we will trim that in just a little while.